Not hit Tim in the back. I just want you to know. Don't want anybody to be frightened. Ron spoke about names, and that was an apt introduction, or really an apt sermon to listen in on. When I was in high school in North Canton, Friday nights were date night. That continues to be the case now. Our date nights are Friday and or Saturday nights, sometimes both. The difference now is that I don't have to worry about who I'm asking out for dates. I have a standing date with a beautiful young woman. But back then, it was a string of people, not a long string of people, but different ones from time to time. When I went out on Fridays or Saturday nights for a date, I would stand at the door as I went out. My mom would stand at the door. She'd look me in the eyes, and she would say, "Charles Edward," I was in for something when she called me by both my names, "Charles Edward, remember who you are." Now, of course, she wasn't reminding me of my name or my address. She wasn't afraid that I would forget how to get home, that I would forget my phone number. Rather, my mother and my father, too, wanted to remind me, wanted me, in fact, to remember, no matter what might come my way, what temptations, what expectations, what opportunities or pressures there might be, they wanted me to remember just who I was. It's sometimes difficult, isn't it, for us to remember who we are in the face of the pressures of our lives, the confusing clamor of claims that are placed upon us. We answer to false names. We misunderstand our claim, our calling. We ignore the one who in fact claimed and called us. It's easy for us to forget who we are. But the question is one particularly pressing on our youth, whose search for self, for the answer to the question of identity, takes up most of their lives, at least their teenage lives and beyond. These days, there are myriad of cults, groups, philosophies, and causes willing to answer the question for us, for those whom we love: who am I? The academic world reminds us that we are mainly brains. We are an intellect, a rational, reasonable, thinking being, one who absorbs facts and figures, one who goes to school and gains an education, who receives a degree that allows us to be set loose on the world. Who am I? Advertisers, salespeople, peddlers, businesses announce, you are primarily a maker and a producer and spender of money. You're a consumer. You're a capitalist. The whole economy depends upon you. You obtain and amass. You are preparing your life for your first car, for your first home, for your first loan, your first 30-year mortgage. You are a lifetime of debt. That's what you are. Who am I? You are an autonomous, self-made, self-centered person, the modern mindset says. You're someone who looks out for number one, that is to say, for yourself. Because you see, you're the most important project and product of your life. Nurturing, caring, lovable old you. It's all about you. Church's response, however, to the question, who am I, or who are you, is a different one from all the rest. It's an answer that's before us this morning in the gospel account. As we remember and recall the baptism of the Lord, Luke tells the story in this way: when all the people were baptized, and when Jesus also had been baptized and was praying, the heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove, and a voice from heaven, "You are my Son, my beloved. With you I am well pleased." Who am I? I'm baptized. You see, the way that Christians find out who we are is not to jump in a minivan and head to the coast, but rather to step forward and gaze into the waters of the font. For in these waters, in this font, we find a reflection, an image of ourselves, of me, of you, of who we really are. We are baptized, and in our baptisms, we receive a name. In the traditional baptismal service, that very question is asked. What name is to be given this child? The pastor will ask parents who bring their child forward for baptism, for washing in the font. The rubric was an echo of an ancient time when the church traditionally named children, when the church named children, usually after one or another of the familiar family saints. And then life for the baptized one became a long process of trying that name on for size, of filling it out with meaning by the way the child lives out his or her life. At first, a big grown-up name like William or Catherine or Elizabeth or Charles or John or even Kara sounds a little strange and pretentious when given to an infant. But as the child grows and grows up, filling his or her name more and more with meaning and purpose, well, one day it just becomes normal and natural, familiar. And we can't imagine calling that person by any other name. Well, these days we come to our baptisms with a name already given to us by another, but in baptism we are given a new name, that which reflects the name of Christ, the one who himself was baptized. We're called Christians. That's Christ follower, Christ friend, Christ formed. In doing this, the church is telling us that our identity in baptism and in life is a gift, not ours to discover or develop, uncover or understand, but a gift that we receive by grace, our lives, our names, our baptisms. And then over time, we too, through the day-to-day experiences of giving and receiving love in families and among our friends, from time to time and over time, we learn what it means to be Christian, to be beloved. Christians are those persons who have been given this status, the status of belovedness, of forgiveness, of royalty. You and I sin. We all fall short of the glory of God, as the Catechism puts it, but aren't simply misdeeds, not things that we do or fail to do, not just rules to break or ignore. Rather, sin is the state of falling short, of missing the mark, of failing to live up to the high calling of a life or lifestyle, that for which we are made. For we are worthy. We are persons of worth, whose worth has been invested in us by the one who himself is worthy of all praise, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, Jesus Christ himself. The Christian project is not that we are to live like another, to act like someone else. The Christian message is that we are already somebody, each of us, all of us together, no exceptions. And as long as even one of God's children, one of God's heirs, is in misery, or is hungry, or is alone, or is lost, then the church cannot rest, cannot cease its efforts at alleviating or nourishing or including or embracing or bringing home. Baptism reminds us that we have been given a name, that we've been given an identity. We are royalty, we are beloved. But baptism also serves as a sign to us and to others, indeed to the world, that we belong to God, that we are among those whom God will not abandon. I will be with you, Yahweh God says, through the words of the prophet Isaiah, who spoke hope and wholeness, purpose to a people dwelling in the darkness of the Babylonian exile. I have called you by name, you are mine. And later, in words which seem to preview those spoken by God over Jesus as he rose from the waters, and God says, you are precious in my sight and honored, and I love you. Can you imagine that? The God of the universe, the one who formed and fashioned all that is and was and will yet be, loves you, loves me. In times of great doubt and turmoil, then, when the German reformer Martin Luther was struggling through those dark nights of the soul which seemed to come to all of God's saints, Luther would strike himself on the forehead and say, "Martin Luther, you are baptized. Remember who you are. One loved by God, one set aside for belovedness, for royalty, one whom God will not abandon. Who are we? We are baptized." I was there to hear your morning cry. I'll be there when you are old. I rejoiced the day you were baptized to see your life unfold. I was there when you were but a child, with a faith to suit you well. In a blaze of light you wandered off to find where demons dwell. When you heard the wonder of the word, I was there to cheer you on. You were raised to praise the living Lord, to whom you now belong. If you find someone to share your time, and you join your hearts as one, I'll be there to make your verses rhyme from dusk till rising sun. In the Middle Ages of your life, not so old, no longer young, I'll be there to guide you through the night, complete what I've begun. The evening gently closes in, and you shut your weary eyes. I'll be there as I have always been, with just one more surprise. I was there to hear your morning cry. I'll be there when you are old. I rejoiced the day you were baptized to see your life unfold.